welcome to Tinnelly Talks. I'm Ramona Acosta.
I'm Steve Tinnelly.
And today we're going to discuss ethics and professionalism with Vicki MacHale of the Community Association Standards and Advocacy, or CASA Alliance. Vicki began her career more than 30 years ago as an activities director for an HOA, later managing on-site operations for master plan communities. She went on to become a division manager, move into executive leadership, and eventually an owner and partner. Along the way, she became an educator for entry-level California-specific certification and designation curriculum, and a featured columnist for Vision magazine. She also served on her own HOA board for over 10 years and 3 elected terms on the CACM board of directors. She later founded the CASA Alliance on the belief that open, honest conversation creates change. She provides a platform to discuss what's often whispered about but rarely said out loud, so that everyone involved in community associations can listen, learn, and decide for themselves. Vicki, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for making me sound so impressive.
It is impressive stuff, Vicki. This is great to have you here on such an important topic, so thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Did you want to tell us a little bit about CASA Alliance and what you do there?
Yeah, it was nothing that was planned. Kind of like going into HOA management. Nobody decides to go into HOA management. When I started sitting back, I got out of the industry about 10 years ago, and I was doing consulting. And in 2004, I started looking at what was happening in the industry. And when you're in it every day, you don't see all of the pieces of the puzzle. But stepping back and watching, I just went, oh my goodness. Yeah. I did not spend 35 years of my life giving everything I had to watch what is happening in this industry right now. And I started reaching out to other people that I knew, and they started telling me a lot of the stuff going on. Then I saw the lawsuit about the earned credits, and I just went, that's it. And so CASA Alliance was born. I just got on there. I woke up one morning and I was like, no, my conscience won't allow this. And that's how it came about. And it was thrown together, and it has kind of morphed over time. I put together a training class, and then from there I just started writing on LinkedIn. I started getting invited to be on other podcasts. I've had a couple of people reach out and ask me if I was going to write a book, which I've been doing, and so it's just kind of snowballing.
That's awesome. Yeah, my experience is very similar to yours. I also started on the management side and was, spent about 20 years on that side. Been on the vendor side for about 12 now. And you're right. When you're in it, you don't always see it. You don't always recognize it. And now on this side of the coin, especially the last couple of years, I've been doing some self-reflection and just kind of thinking, what are the things that I was doing as a manager? What are things that we can be doing better as a business partner, just to kind of elevate the industry, raise that level of professionalism. And that's why I reached out to you, and I'm so happy that you agreed to come onto our podcast today. We're going to talk about ethics and professionalism, and this is a pretty hard conversation to have. Again, we really have to have that self-reflection. We have to be willing to take a look at ourselves, what we're doing, why we're doing it. It's I think everybody has a different moral standard, and sometimes finding the line is not always black and white. And so I think that we need to have these conversations more often. And I think that we need to be willing to bring it into the daylight.
Definitely. I mean, even for those that might have that high moral standard, just knowing that, hey, it's okay to talk about that.
Yep.
Right. And you don't have to naturally just assimilate to what you see is going on around you. If you want to have a different outlook on your professional goals and kind of where you want to position yourself as a professional within this industry, or as you continue to grow a manager or a mentor, it's important. So there's no harm in talking about things. That's for sure.
Right. So, Vicki, you had said something when we were emailing back and forth. CAI calls vendors business partners, right? I mean, the idea is that it is supposed to be a partnership. Networking is a large part of what we do as an industry. That's how we build the relationships. That's how managers get to know us. And you asked the question and you said, but where does networking end and gift giving or gratuity begin? Where does the undue influence begin?
That is something that I go back and forth with because I understand I have been out of the industry for a while and I understand that times change. But when I was seeing some of the things that are just openly on LinkedIn and people are celebrating it, and leaders of the industry are going, I want to do that, or this is great. And I'm looking back and I'm going, okay, I have to sit back and go, is this normal for the times, or are we starting to normalize things that shouldn't happen? And I always go back and I say, if my board members or the homeowners saw what was happening, what would they say? And what would their impression be? And that's where I always kind of draw that line is no, lunch and learns at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Uh-uh. There's 30 managers at Ruth Chris and there's a lunch and learn. And to me that is over the line. But again, those are my ethics and my values. But having been in the industry so long and knowing we were always accused of doing things, which maybe I'm naive, but it just didn't happen in the industry. And we were very careful to make sure we didn't cross those lines because even though we were sitting across from the homeowners or the board members accusing us of doing, taking kickbacks or the gifts and steering the contracts to our friends, I could sit there and I could teach my managers and my staff to say what they say doesn't matter because you know what you've done inside and you could prove it if need be.
Mhm.
And that's where I think we're really getting away from that right now.
It's interesting that you say that. We hosted a rooftop party down in San Diego a couple of weeks ago, and there were two management company owners there of all the guests that were there, small management companies. And, we got to talking. I can't remember how this issue came up, but we got to talking about that. And that was one of the things that they were saying is that they are having a hard time trying to teach their managers what is acceptable, what is unacceptable. And one of them said, that he coaches his managers just the way you described. But it's hard to tell your managers one thing and to behave one way when all of their peers or a good portion of their peers are behaving in a different manner when they are constantly being bombarded by vendors and business partners who constantly have what you describe as the candy, constantly having something to give, right? We as business partners, we should not be the Pied Piper of gratuities, right? And I think it can be challenging for us because we're looking for something unique. We're looking for something different, right? I always say throw a stone and you could hit an attorney in this industry, right? There's so many different law firms, right? So how do I make Tinnelly Law Group stand out? And how do I get you to come to my event versus going to somebody else's event? And so there's this constant challenge of trying to one up or trying to be unique, trying to be different. And then the challenge is, but how do I do that without crossing a line? And I don't know that all the business partners even consider that. I don't even know that we even think about that a lot. I know quite a few do. I know most do. We're always thinking about ROI and things like that. But I don't know that we always engage in the ethical component of it.
No, and honestly, I think, there's a lot of business partners that maybe aren't motivated to think about it or not in a position to think about it. I mean, I remember when we rebranded and we were much smaller, right? Kind of the business sense of me is you get an idea of the landscape and what do you have to do in order to compete, right? So at that point, as a business partner, I got to compete. I got to make payroll, right? So what do I need to do in order to grow the top line, in order to get more clients in the door? Well, if this is kind of the nature of the landscape that's been set before me, you gotta find a way to navigate it one way or another, which then it kind of compounds on itself, right? Because I think that's what you talk about. Things start normalizing, and it's one of those scenarios where a lot of times you hold your nose, kind of doing, oh, this is just a negative thing about the industry, or this is something I wish we're different. But then you come up for air and you realize, like, what are we doing? Like, why are we considering this event? Is because a competitor or somebody else in the industry did a similar type of event and we want to go bigger, and you don't even stop to take a breath. And I think there's a lot of business partners out there that would prefer the scenario not be the way it was. Like, can I just compete on my talent, the talent of my team, the strength of my team, how we treat our clients, how we do all those things. And of course we want to form partnerships, but I mean, in order to do that, does there have to be yacht parties and a variety of different scenarios, and that's kind of where it's gone. And I felt like it really reached kind of critical mass. And then, then we had the stay in place order. Then we had COVID hit, right? Which I think allowed that opportunity for self-reflection. Like, what are we doing? What were we doing before and why? I know that's when we started looking at our marketing approach, and we've shifted things. So yeah, it's got to be challenging, especially for new business partners that are entering this field. But, oh, is this kind of the nature of what it is? Maybe the answer is yes, but I think it's good that we're giving voice to, well, why does it have to continue to be? And is there a better direction that we can start moving things in?
That you've brought up so many great things. And again, back in my day, the events, once in a great blue moon, there was a private boat event for a tour around the harbor, but it was usually 5 or 6 vendors and everybody was invited. It was a big boat, and it was a lot of fun. And when there were larger events, you might have 5 or 6 companies get together and you go on a wine tour, or so there were those nice times, but most of it was industry events or industry parties. And then there were lunch and learns where the vendors would come in. But we used to be much more relation based. Like my preferred vendor list, it contained people that I knew had given sustained superior performance to my clients. And I would have vendors call me all the time. What does it take to get on your vendors list? And I said, I'll tell you what it takes to get on my vendors list is it takes you giving my clients a lot of times. Getting on my list is not difficult. It's being off of my list that you don't want, because that means that after I've gone through our relationship values, I've given you the opportunity to step up and to do a good job. You didn't, and you let my managers down, and in turn, you let my clients down. And to me, that is a preferred vendor listing.
Yeah.
And now, where the challenge came in sometimes is somebody wasn't on your list or they weren't already in your company, is giving them the opportunity. I've had several vendors throughout the years that were new to the industry. I talked to them. I liked them. I gave them a choice. I'll give you an example. I was sitting in my office one day and there were ants everywhere. It's when I was on site. And a guy came in and he said to me, "Oh, I'm in pest control." And he said, "I'd love to get on your vendors list." And I said, "I'll tell you what, if you could get rid of these ants in the next 15 minutes, you're on the list."
I love it.
And he came in with this peppermint spray and never saw another ant. So I allowed him to bid the contract because I was sitting in ants. We were getting new pest control. And so he came to me and he got that account. I never saw another bug. And so I told him, I said, Jim, his name was Jim, I'm going to give you an opportunity to build or to grow in my company. I said, but here's my rules, because I see this too often. You get a great vendor, they come in, they get so much business that pretty soon they start giving crappy business to everybody. And I'm putting it on you that you will never grow past the point where you cannot service my clients. Because when you let my clients down, it rolls downhill to my managers. And in 17 years of using that vendor, he serviced my clients in an excellent manner. And that to me is the relationship that you have with your vendors, not on whether or not they're going to give you a 10% kickback or pay $20,000 for your Christmas party or give your managers, lunch at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Like, to me, that is not relationship building. Those are relationships built on what can I get out of it. And when that happens, the client becomes secondary to
Yeah.
service.
Yeah. When I was managing, I had a reputation for being hard on my vendors, but I was also very fair and very loyal to my vendors, and they appreciated that, right? Everything was based on merit. And I can't tell you the number of times that I sat in a meeting with, 3 to 5 proposals, and the board would say, well, who do you like? And I would say, well, first of all, I'm not going to put a proposal in front of you with a vendor I don't like. So I like all of them. But maybe this is a job that I haven't, worked directly with these vendors before, right? Maybe other managers in my company, but I know them because I've seen them at CAI. I've had lunch and learns with them. I've gone to lunch with them. I've built a relationship. So I can sit in front of that board and say, you know what? I haven't had the opportunity to work with Tinnelly Law Group before, but I know Steve. I sit on the education committee with Steve. I can speak to his character. I can speak to his knowledge. I would be perfectly comfortable putting this proposal in front of you. And all of that is just based on the relationship that was built, that's based on value, character, merit, right? None of that was based on, he, took me to Disneyland the day before Expo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's an important question for boards too, and for the managers that are listening. I mean, I think, and we've talked about this on our other podcasts before. I think managers, especially ones that are, relatively junior in the space, right? You're in a customer service role in a lot of respects, and you want to please the board, right? You want to make sure that you're doing a good job. And I think some of that results in the manager kind of just naturally averse to really kind of stiffening their spine when they need to and really presenting themselves as a third-party professional, right? So when you say, well, first and foremost, I would not put anybody in front of you that I didn't like. But it's an opportunity for managers, if a board member says, well, why these proposals, why these vendors? If you have the chance to say, I've worked with them for this community. Let me tell you about a project. Actually, let me tell you about a project that didn't go so well initially and what they did to react to it and respond and make sure that was right. If I'm on a board, or if I'm, a superior in your business organization, that to me is so much more compelling, and I think does so much more for the manager in terms of their career advancement and their client perspective than, oh, they're a great company. I know this guy really well. They've got a lot of clients. They do a lot of jobs. Okay, well, you're not telling me why did you bring them? Other than, is that really all that you know about them, right? And that's where it comes down to, okay, are they really a partner? Are they someone that you've worked with, or are they someone that you've seen at a number of events and you've been hosted at a number of things, and you kind of told them, don't worry, I'm going to get you in front of my board. Just give me time.
Well, yeah. And then there are also those instances where maybe the board wants to interview somebody, or you have these bids in front of you. And yeah, this person just gave you a huge prize. Or, what I see a lot is somebody has, and this was a problem in CACM way back when, is we would have the annual expo. And at the end of the day, the vendors would give away the big prizes. And all of a sudden, we started noticing, well, this person has a huge landscape project coming up, and this person has a large construction company coming up. And all of a sudden, their names were chosen, and they have 2 or 3 of these big gifts. And I will tell you what, back then, Karen Conlon, she shut it off immediately and quit allowing the vendors to pick. Like, she had a staff person or a board member go around and do the picking. So that was to me, the most honorable thing to do. And it was a warning shot across the bow to vendors saying, uh-uh. And another time I had a landscape company call and offer me $10,000 to get on my preferred vendor list. And I called CACM and they were removed from the organization.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to introduce Tinnelly Law Group. We're an HOA law firm that's been representing homeowners associations for over 30 years. We love working with our client family over 1,000 communities in a wide variety of practice areas, including assessment collection. In fact, in 2013, we developed Altera Assessment Recovery, which is quickly becoming an industry leader in the area. Our Find HOA Law web library is also another example of our modern approach to adding value to our clients. We hope to have the opportunity to work with you and to develop a relationship with you and your community.
It's interesting though, now that you say that, because at this year's CACM Expo, there was a business partner who came up to me and wanted to know why we don't co-sponsor any events with them. We don't give them any work. We don't co-sponsor anything with them. And they wanted to know why, and they wanted to build a relationship. And I said, I'm sorry, but you already have a reputation. There's already been rumor that you give kickbacks, and it was in fact confirmed to me that your company is giving kickbacks to managers, and I can't allow my firm. I can't let that touch my firm, the reputation of my firm. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do business with you. And so, they acknowledged it. They said that they had done that in the past, but they have new ownership and that doesn't go on anymore. And that's nice to hear, but also they have a reputation now. And I don't want that reputation touching our reputation.
Yeah, well, it's tough. Like I said, like any business owner, right? You're looking at this. Okay, what's how do you maximize, right, your market brand, right? So any potential liability is something that you want to mitigate, and that's a tough situation. Yeah, there was different leadership in place before, and that wasn't the right way to do. And we're doing a new thing, and we're going about it a different way, and that's all great. But the problem is that other people don't know that.
Right.
Right. So, it's what's the perspective that you're getting, especially for us as attorneys. I mean, what we sell in large part, right, is our integrity, our credibility, right? So the second that can get jeopardized, that's something that we gotta stay away from. So I'm glad you had that interaction. I know that's difficult. And I can't imagine how difficult it's been for you, Vicki, as you start speaking up about these things. I mean, I'm just curious to know, and I'm sure some people are curious to know as well. I mean, is there any general feedback from the standpoint of, well, stop talking about this. This isn't as bad as it is. Like, what's your experience been like that?
I had a few people reach out early on saying, "What are you doing?" But I shut that down right away. And
Yeah,
so I don't get a lot of that anymore. And I think sometimes, like, I write much meaner than I really am.
got it.
So I think, and people know me, like they know that I'm going to call a spade a spade. So um, for those that do know me or who just see me online, they might be a little bit intimidated. So I don't get a lot of that, but I do get so many people. The thing is what I write is very controversial. So it's very interesting because I play and I watch like what articles bring what comments, who comes in, who's watching, and just to kind of get an idea of who I'm with. And it's funny because I wrote an article the other day, and before you know it, I have all the heads of all the major companies following me. And I'm like, whoa,
Oh, that's exciting.
it must be the hair.
That's so good.
But I have so many vendors come to me and say, Vicki, it's horrible because we won't give the kickbacks, and now nobody wants to work with us. And we're slowly being pushed out of business, but I can't say anything because I'll make enemies. And I look at them and I say, do you understand they're using your silence and your fear against you? Because if they're already putting you out of business because you won't give a kickback, you're just slowing the process. And your voice, our voices in this industry right now, if there's any hope of kind of getting our arms around it, is talking about it, getting it out there, and getting the attention of people that can come in and say, wait a second, we need to really look what's going on in HOA management, because now we have private equity just investing hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars into these big companies, into the industry. And private equity doesn't put money in there because they feel sorry for homeowners. They put the money in there because they expect a return on investment. And if you look at the history of private equity and these big major conglomerations, at some point, uh, look at it in healthcare. People can't afford their healthcare. They can't afford their co-payments. And I look at what's happening in the industry with the Florida market and now the FHA. We literally had to have the FHA step in, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, to come in and start setting a standard for freaking reserves because the projects couldn't sell. And to me, that is nothing to be proud of. That is a black eye to the industry as a whole. So I'm very concerned. And the gift giving and all of the stuff going on, these are people's homes. It's where their kids live. It's one day you want your kids or your grandkids to be able to own a home. And I want to be proud of what I've done. And my legacy is that they will go into safety.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle, right? Because the associations, they don't want to assess in an amount that they should. Management companies keep management fees. Assessments are artificially low. Management fees then become artificially low in terms of contract fees, right? And so now we're looking at exhibit A's and extras and where can we make more money? However that management company decides to do that. And then they're looking to business partners to your point, to fund the employee appreciation parties, to fund the Christmas parties, to fund the board member educations and all of those
And to
things.
assist with employee retention.
Yeah.
You know, I think that this industry, I mean, a lot of managers, and I get it. I mean, this industry is so unique. It's so small, but it's so big, right? And I think for the manager that's getting 200 or 300 emails in their inbox, you know, 99% of them are saying, I have a problem and you're not doing enough to solve it and you're terrible.
Yep.
I can get, and I think it's just a natural human reaction, be, well, you know, thank God I have my friends. Thank God I have this person that I work with at this company and this person, these are my vendors. You know, they're the ones that we can share those. So you don't want to dilute those relationships. That's very important.
No.
But I think another thing that's just so unique is, I mean, the idea of, you know, business partner relationships and providing, what did you call it? Your term for candy? Candy is like an all-encompassing term.
Yeah,
for
follow the candy. The candy is
the goodies. Right, I like that. I haven't heard that before. In any industry that you're in, I think, you know, if you're selling tech products and, you know, big software licenses or whatever the circumstance might be, any business-to-business relationship, there's going to be candy. What's different about our scenario is that the business-to-business relationship decisions are getting made and services are getting paid for with a third party's money, of which there's a fiduciary obligation that extends to them. So it's not as though you're spending your money with this vendor account and this is the vendor and they're responsible to you for the work and the service that they're providing. They're responsible to a third party, of which, you know, your company is not necessarily tied to and you're not funding. And that's why I think it makes it just increasingly more important for us to really take a hard look at what it is that we're doing, because we're spending other people's money. It's not our company's money that we're spending. So we're spend money on you, award me the business that you're paying for with other people's money. That's what I think is sometimes lost on people. Say, well, what does it matter? It happens in every industry. Ours is different though. Ours is a little different.
And I want to speak to that because I just wrote an article about that. Is what we don't seem to understand is in the HOA ecosystem, there's only one person that pays the bills, and that's the homeowners. So the vendor that gives the $20,000 to the management company for their Christmas party or buys all of these things, they're in it for a profit too. So somewhere along the line, they have to make up for that money. And what happens to that is that money gets rolled into their contract prices. And if they're paying a 10% kickback, they're not absorbing that. They're writing that right into their contract, knowing that this company is having everybody pay 10% more. So they know they could up that bid by 10%. So now the board member is paying more and they're making up for the money that they're paying for industry events. And all of this at some point rolls downhill to homeowners. It's not free money from vendors, or it's not free money from anybody. At the end of the day, there's one person that pays, and it's the 378, or what is it, 75 million people living in the homeowners associations. It always rolls downhill, and ultimately the buck starts there. And they're paying their taxes, they're paying their Mello-Roos, they're paying their mud and their special assessment districts and their HOA fees, and all of this is on the backs of homeowners. And we have people that may never be able to afford a home, and we have to realize that we are part of this system.
To that point, Vicki, I know you and I talked a lot about all of the ethics policies, right? I mean, CACM has an ethics policy. CAI has an ethics policy. Our firm, we're a course provider for CAMICB. That's the certification arm for CAI, for the CMCA certification. So that's the policy that we follow. We follow the CAMICB ethics policy. But every arm of this industry has an ethics policy, and all of them say something to the effect of managers are prohibited from accepting gifts or gratuities or any kind of remuneration that would become a conflict of interest, right? So if the manager is presenting a proposal to a client association from somebody that has given them a gift, they are required to disclose that. Now, all of each industry organization has a different dollar amount. CAMICB is $100 per instance, $500 annually per vendor. I teach ethics as part of our prerequisite course, and every time I do, I have the managers raise their hands, and I say, how many of you think that over the course of the year, you've hit that $500 or have gone well over that $500 with any one vendor? And universally, they all raise their hands. But I don't know any manager who consistently discloses those gifts or gratuities. And I think we talk about kickbacks, and I think everybody understands that a straight up kickback is wrong. I think where we get into the gray is the parties and the happy hours and some of the gifts, and things like that. And managers kind of, I don't know if they even think about it, if they even consider it, if they know that they should. I know when I was managing and I look back on that time, there were probably things that I should have disclosed and didn't disclose. I think in the 20 years that I managed, I made 2 disclosures ever. And I'm sure I probably should have done more. But now that you're on the other side, and now that you are consulting with associations, even if a manager did make that disclosure, how do you think your client boards, or the people that you're working with, would they be okay with it? What do you think that their reactions would be?
You know what? I think they're having the same reactions as, oh, I don't know if you want to go here, but I think they're having the same reactions as anybody was. The minute I disclose, now it kind of seems like it feels, there's that fear of what are they going to say, or I look more guilty by saying something. And so I think it's very uncomfortable. And it really, I have to laugh about, because like you, not until I started talking out did I have to go back and look. And I will tell you, the biggest gift I ever got in the industry was at the CACM events, that the vendors would hold the private dinners, and you'd have a couple get together and you go out and you'd have like a nice 5-course meal or what have you. That was the biggest thing I ever took. And then another time I wanted a pond in my backyard, and I woke up, I was telling my landscaper about it, and I woke up and I had one of those big claw hook things digging out my pond. And I went out there and I yelled, "What are you doing?" And I immediately wrote a check and said, "No, absolutely not. Thank you very much. I appreciate what you're doing, but no." So the the idea of telling somebody, I think it's very uncomfortable. And so I don't think people do it. I never did, but then it never occurred to me to do that. I was
Right.
always too busy working. Now, I used to have some managers, not many, but I had a handful, and I would watch them, and they were always out of the office doing, the events and those type of things. And I would call them in and I'd say, "I'm not telling you not to go to these things, and you're getting your work done. So I can't really say anything about it. But I'm telling you that in this industry, your reputation is gold.
Mhm.
And if if you don't have a reputation, or your reputation is diminished, I can't employ you, and other people will not." I don't think that's an issue anymore. So,
Mhm.
but and I'm going to bring this up because it's very known. It was at the latest CAI's law seminar. They had the CERMS event where they talked about the insurance commission shares
Mhm.
and the disclosure issue. And a big part of the issue is a lot of the company owners didn't want to disclose it, or they would not hire the companies, or not hire the companies, but allow the companies who insisted upon that disclosure. And so when you have these major companies who don't want to disclose, how can you look at a manager
Mhm.
and point the finger at them? Because, and I'm not saying that managers are children by any means, but monkey see, monkey do. When the environment around you doesn't see a problem with it, then why should you? When your employer is paying you a commission each month, or giving you a chance to win a prize or to win money because you've funneled their ancillary services, then it sets a precedence. And I want to say something real quick, because we're talking about the people that are doing this, but I want to say, just like yourselves and other management companies owners I'm talking to, there are still a lot of great management companies out there, a lot of great vendors still trying to do things the right way in an industry where things are stacked against them right now. And I think they deserve as much credit as anybody else. And I try to be very cognizant of that when I talk about the very people in this industry that we should be looking up to and should be setting the example. When they're no longer the example, and it's the people at the bottom of the food chain that are now the example, something has changed.
Right. And Steve and I had this conversation on Friday. To my mind, the fact that there is even this much chatter in the industry that this is going on, people are talking about this. As I said, management company owners are talking about this. Business partners are talking about this. The fact that people are talking about it tells you that people know that it's wrong,
Yeah.
right? People
Mhm.
are starting to speak up. They're starting to say something about it. And I think that I see that as a good thing, right? It's every industry is going to have some bad actors. It doesn't matter what you do, where you go. That's always going to be the case. But the fact that so many people are starting to bring this to light tells you that we're ripe for change, right? Now's the time to do something.
Well, I mean, what our last symposium, we talked a lot about Florida law, right? Recently enacted bills in Florida, and kind of the nature where that legislation is, because both California and Florida, they speak to each other. Trends kind of follow the other. We've got some reserve funding bills and things along those lines that have been proposed this year that are likely to get signed in the wake of Florida's initiatives that they passed in response to the Champlain Towers incident.
With over 55,000 homeowners associations in California and a generation of seasoned managers nearing retirement, the need for community managers has never been greater. It's imperative to recruit and educate a new generation of managers who will lead the way with proper education, training, and development. Tinnelly Law Group has developed the first prerequisite certification course based in California law that complies with state certification requirements and is approved by CAMICB as a prerequisite course to earn your CMCA certification. Welcome to CAM University, developed by California attorneys specializing in HOA law and led by a PCAM with 30 years of industry knowledge and expertise. This one-of-a-kind program was designed with the manager in mind. Begin your professional development through CAM University, powered by Tinnelly Law Group, your community, your counsel.
But as part of their homeowner bill of rights, attorney in our office, senior attorney Tim Mahar, he went through and he researched it a bunch. He said, "Do you even understand what's in here, Steve? There's a lot of stuff that we don't even know." One of which was making it actually a criminal penalty for managers to accept a kickback in any form. I mean, you're actually incarcerated. I mean, it's under their penal code. It's a crime, right? Failing to disclose and taking the kickback, both of them. Same thing for board members as well. That is law in Florida. So it's not a far stretch to think that that's where we're going. And now Florida, I mean, they even have a bill proposed to abolish all of HOA. So I think it's important that it is talked about. And you're right. I mean, when I first came in the industry, you heard a little bit about this. I'm hearing a lot about it now. And what's tough is before I was able to kind of reflectively dismiss these types of accusations or allegations from board members or homeowners. But now I'm kind of like, well, I mean, she's just doing that. She's just funneling business because they're taking a kickback or whatever it is. I used to be like, whoa, come on. No, they're like, well, now if you think about it, I mean, that's not the only reason, but I mean, it's definitely an influence, and it's kind of where we led it to. And I don't think that managers and management companies or anything are to blame for this. I mean, I think it's just a circumstance where everybody is just trying to compete. It's a very niche market. You get in there, but once you do it, you can develop relationships. You can develop lines of recurring business, and as more entrants make there, how do you continue to distinguish yourself and do all that stuff? But at some point, you got to come up for air. And when you look at that marketing budget and like, what kind of event are we putting together, and what expectation are we creating? I mean, we know managers, most of them enter the industry. They're young, right? And there's usually a short life cycle, right? For managers, those that exceed that life cycle tend to be promoted. They graduate to these things, and that's great. But in that short period of time, we're kind of introducing them right out the gate, and we tell our attorneys the same thing. Hey, the new managers that are new, they're great to develop a relationship with, but those are the ones where pick up the phone and call them, right? Do them a solid, do something along those lines, not add them to the list in order to give them, make them part of our next, luxury clothing event or whatever the circumstance might be. I think that's where we veered off course, and I don't think anybody's better for it. I mean, even the vendors that are, that have profited from it and been able to compete along those lines and profit from that, they're kind of creating a new scenario that they're going to have to keep playing in. I don't know if it's the best long term for that side either.
I don't think it's the best. And when I sit back and I look at some of these things, I'm seeing ecosystems. You've got, I don't know, a construction defect attorney, you have a general counsel, you have insurance, you have construction company. And I sit back and I look, and I don't know who the managers are, but they're all young. And I go, I want to know how many of those are on a high or a mid-rise or a condo that's newly built, and within that 2-year time frame of what triggers construction defect. I want to know how many of these managers, they're looking at construction defect, or there's a big project that needs to be done. Especially because I'm starting to see less of, let's invite all of the people who want to come from 5 companies into more, there's 10, 20, 30 people. And it almost looks like you're picking and choosing who those people are. And that really concerns me because, first of all, if you work for a company and it's only their preferred vendors, And now the preferred vendors within that company are stepping it up. So now you have a double, almost like double dipping. Like, yeah, I'm in this company, but now I'm going to step it up and give you another incentive. So when there's 3 bids on the table and it's what your company allows you to go with, but this person, took you out for a $400 dinner, is it easier to steer the client to that person? That person that calls up and says, "Hey, is tonight the board meeting or not? Oh, I'm just checking in. Gosh, I had so much fun at that event," and just dropping that little hint. And when you haven't been in the business a long time, or if you're naive, you may not catch these things. And that's, how the game is played.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially I mean, you're a junior manager. You're trying to develop these relationships. You want to be successful. You want to advance. You want to grow. Well, this person, they're a fixture in the industry. I don't want to do anything to chap them, right? So if they're calling me on this is okay. And then who do you go? And then who do you go and talk about that to? I mean, I think that's another issue as well. Like we're talking about this, but what my daughters say, how do we get this out the chat, right? How do we bring it to a point? I'm sitting here as we're talking. I know we've talked about it before, just racking my brains. I mean, more conversation is good, but it's just, how do you get it to a point where, I don't know if it's some kind of initiative or something where people can signal like, no, listen, we're kind of standing for a new generation or a new breed of how we're going to approach this thing. And maybe there's a moniker attached to it. I don't know. But
I mean, honestly, I think it's incumbent upon the business partners. I think we as business partners have to be willing to say no. I think that we have to be willing to draw a line. As you said, our firm, took a hard look at this the last couple of years. We've significantly scaled back. I know several other business partners that have done the same. But as long as people are willing to pay, people are going to be willing to have a handout, right? And so it's at some point somebody has to start saying no. And I think we as business partners, we have to really take a hard look and say, yes, I want business, but is this the business that I want? Right? Probably not. So, we have to be the ones that have to be willing to set the boundaries. I think that's my opinion.
You got to start there.
I think you do, but I think we also have to start flipping the script, because we've always looked at business one way. And the reason why these people got in front of us is because they look at business in a different way, things that we would have never even considered 10 or 20 years. Well, I know 20 years ago, but now it's different. So now, and to me, it's education of the board members and maybe even the homeowners to drive that. So now maybe it's not the managers you're going out, or you're still doing it with the traditional managers, but maybe now your marketing is geared more towards board members. Hey, when you contract with the Tinnelly company, there's no backdoor deals, and we will watch your contracts for known companies who do kickbacks. And when I look at the lawsuit about the earned credits, we now have a lawsuit tied to an alleged $30 million in earned credits. And that was because one attorney said to their client, I've heard this is happening. And now we have the potential for a class action lawsuit. I know there's a lot of people trying to keep quiet. There's a lot of people not talking about it. But me, I'll talk about it all day long, because I don't want to see a fellow person get sued. But if it brings it out into the open and it stops it, then I'm all for it. And so I think that's where it comes in now is, okay, we used to talk to the managers, but if we don't have that with the managers now, maybe we start going to the boards and educating the boards and allowing the boards and the homeowners to step up and say,
Well, I mean, I know, again, that's something that we took a hard look at, in our firm as well. The manager is the conduit between, the vendor and that end client. So, it's the association that's paying the bills. It's the association that's letting out the business, right? It's the association that's signing that contract. And so if we're really interested in building relationship and maintaining that relationship, then really let's start pulling in the associations themselves, right? We're starting to encourage our attorneys to not only take a manager to lunch, but why don't you take the board president out to lunch as well? Talk about the open matters, talk about what's going on in the association. I'm starting to do more and more lunch and learns. That's becoming a bigger part of my marketing plan. And to be frank with you, I get more business out of the board member symposiums and the lunch and learns and the board education programs than I do from the rooftop parties and the happy hours and things like that, right? Because not only are you building the relationship, but you're also saying, hey, I actually know what I'm doing too. Like, let me give you some education.
We can actually add value beyond just signing for the check, right?
Right.
I mean, that's...
And board members are hungry for education. I mean, they are. And so to me, that's it. Is right now I'm speaking out because I thought maybe if I start speaking out, it starts setting a platform for other people to feel more comfortable doing it. And there's nobody really in the industry right now. And I understand I'm in a unique position because I have 35 years of industry knowledge. But yet, speaking out isn't going to harm my career. I mean, they can keep me from consulting, but I know what I'm talking about.
Well, before we tie things up, let's talk about best practices, because we're talking about a lot of things that we're starting to see go sideways. But we can't end this without talking about, okay, what can we do to change it? What can we do to make it better? So from your perspective, Vicki, what would be some best practices that you think managers and or business partners could follow?
This is great. And I will tell you something. I used to not teach ethics because I always thought either you're ethical or you're not.
Yeah.
Um, but I think we really need to start talking about ethics and teaching ethics, but we can only teach it if the people at the top are willing to support it. But one-on-one, like conversations like this, with you having talks with managers, with the board members, with those companies still trying to do it the right way, is explaining it to people. Now, are some going to continue to do it? Yeah, there's nothing we can do. But as long as we at least try to get the word out there and do our best, the writing of the articles, because that's the thing is if those of us that don't support it don't say something, then we're kind of sort of the problem is my thing is that if you don't use your voice, if you stand for nothing, then you fall for everything type of deal. So just keep talking about it, keep putting it out there. And I love what you did where you told the vendor, I can't have my name attached to you. Tinnelly Law Firm is a staple in the industry. It's been around. It was when I first started, there were a handful of law firms, and it was always one of the ones that everybody knew you could go to. And that stands for something, and it should stand for something. And I really appreciate your bringing me in here because I get so into this, I think it's everywhere. But then I have somebody come in and willing to, and you're really kind of putting your butt on the line going against what's going on right now. And that deserves appreciation and recognition. So
thank you for that. Yeah, I would say the other thing I would encourage managers to do is, if you're going to go to the steak dinners, if you're going to, go to the parties, it's not that you can't do that, but, realize that this does create an undue influence, whether you realize it or not. And so if you're going to be presenting these proposals to your clients, right, you need to disclose within the parameters that are within those ethics policies. And if you start to feel some discomfort as to whether or not you should disclose, then I think that's that moment where you take that hard look, right? You take a look inside and say, okay, I'm feeling nervous about making this disclosure. I don't know how my board is going to react. And I think that's when you have that gut check moment and think, okay, maybe I probably shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if the event's ridiculous, and you have to explain it to the client, I went to a nautical white party on a 3-story yacht. And I mean, that's one of those things where you shouldn't go. Give me your ticket. That sounds like a lot of fun. I'll go with you back.
I probably would go.
No, but I mean, I know, managers, if you feel a little discomfort, I mean, God, talking to my board about anything is brings about discomfort, and I can get that too. But I don't know, maybe, again, this is one of those scenarios where I think sometimes the situation that you're averse to is actually going to be one that's beneficial to you. Like I can say this candidly. If I'm sitting at a board table and there's, proposals for 3 landscape companies, and the manager said, I want to disclose the fact that I work with this landscape company on 3 other communities. I participated in a client appreciation dinner there. It was a nice dinner there last year. It's great. I know the team on that. These other companies are great as well, but I felt it's important for you to understand, and I feel it's important for me to explain it to you, that I do have an existing relationship with this company, and I have gone to one of their events that they've thrown for us. To me, as a board member, I would be impressed by somebody who's got the stones, stand up there and explain that scenario, because they know a lot of this stuff's going on. I mean, this is prevalent in the property management industry. Community management is property management, just with hundreds of doors, right? So it's bigger dollars, it's bigger contracts, bigger transaction. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for a manager to stiffen their spine, look to the board members, hey, I want to read you guys in on something, right? I think it's important that I disclose this, and this is, the nature of it. This is why, I mean, if anything, it gives you an opportunity. Well, this is why they work on these other communities. They did a fantastic job here, fantastic job here. I know colleagues of mine, they work with this other company. They do a fantastic job. I just didn't go to any dinner with them. I would be impressed with the manager.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, I think in my career, I made that I had to make that disclosure a couple of times. And both times, my boards went with that contractor.
Yeah.
So, it didn't come off as a bad thing. And I think that the willingness to be professional, to be honest, right? I think that just gives you more credibility. But by the same token, right? You can't be making that disclosure every month either. Thank you all for listening. We'd like to thank Vicki MacHale for your time and expertise. Make sure you visit our website at tinnellylaw.com, where we break down this episode, and then stay tuned for our next one, which will be on mental health and wellness.